Hi, I'm David Piercy, and welcome to my Tribute to Jimi Hendrix YouTube page. Now, I have been collecting and researching Jimi Hendrix for longer than I haven't been doing it, about 45 of my almost 60 years. And I've made friends around the world. I've traveled across the country. I have met many of Jimi's contemporaries, bandmates, and got to hang out and share some stories with them. I've visited a lot of the places that were instrumental and important in Jimi's life, like Electric Lady Studios and Seattle, and I met his dad. And like I said before, I've amassed a lot of cool stories. And you can learn more about that by going to my website, JimiHendrixOnline.com. Now, in this series of videos, I'm going to tell, in short, some cool stories that I've gotten from some of the people that I've met. And in this particular story, we're going to talk about Delaney and Bonnie. Now, Delaney and Bonnie were a husband and wife team, duo, singers, songwriters, musicians. They had a rotating cast of characters in their band, which collectively was called Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. And the core of the group was Carl Radle bass, Jim Gordon on drums, and Bobby Whitlock on piano and vocals. Now, those in the know will remember and recall that they were the core group that became Derek and the Dominoes. But that's another story. For this story, we're going to talk about Delaney and Bonnie and the night Jimi sat in with him. Now, Delaney and Bonnie were so popular at one time in the early 70s that some of the greatest guitar players in the history of rock recorded with them, played shows with them, and in some cases toured with them. Now, we're talking George Harrison, Duane Allman, Dave Mason, and once again, for the purposes of this story, Jimi Hendrix. Now, the night Jimi sat in with them was in March of 1969 at the California Expo, and they were doing a show there. Now, one of the things on my website, if you go there, is the autograph section, and this is one of my favorite things, and it's one of my favorite items from my collection to gather, and that's pictures of Jimi and other rock stars of that era. And I've gotten to meet a lot of these people, and I will take usually 2 copies of Jimi and whoever it is, one for them to sign for me, and one for them because they invariably want a copy for themselves. So I had, from the night that Jimi sat in with Delaney and Bonnie, there's a kind of unlistenable audience recording, which is too bad, from the show. But there were a series of photos made, a few in color and a few in black and white. So I had those, and there was only one shot that had Jimi and Delaney and Bonnie together. It's kind of a grainy black and white shot, but it was a cool shot, and there was a couple of good color shots. And I had always thought how cool it would be if I could get Delaney and Bonnie to autograph this picture. Wasn't likely to happen because they had been divorced for many years. Bonnie lived in the Nashville area, but Delaney lived on the West Coast. So I was lucky. I've been in the Nashville area for 50 years. And Bonnie played a nightclub, played a club gig. So I went down and I took a couple of copies of this picture. And I gave one to her, and she fondly remembered the night, clearly remembered the night, and spoke of it, and signed the photograph, which was great. But I thought, well, this is cool, but it would be nice if I could complete the hat trick and get Delaney to sign it too. Well, lo and behold, the angels smiled upon me, because might have been a couple of months later, 2 or 3 months later, I pick up the paper one morning and it says, Delaney and Bonnie reunite for one night to sing back up for their daughter Becca's CD release party. And this was at a little club, nice little venue in Nashville called 3rd and Lindsley. So I thought, well, this is my shot. So I knew it would be pandemonium the night of the show. So I knew my best shot would be to go down in the afternoon and hope to catch them setting up for the evening. So I went down to 3rd and Lindsley about lunchtime or so, and there was a couple cars in the parking lot. Had everything in hand, tried the front door was locked. So I went around the side, and the side door was being held ajar by a big brickle block. I guess it was summertime, to get a little air circulating in the place. And so I brazenly stepped in the door, and there they were, just standing there looking at me. And I just extended my hand and said, told Delaney Brown what a fan I was, and that I had something special that I wanted to give him. And I said, these are from the night Jimi Hendrix sat in with Delaney and Bonnie. And Bonnie smiled and said, I remember you. And Delaney took the color shot, and he looked at it, and, you know, didn't say a word. And then he held it to his chest, and he said, this is a joy. And he looked up at me, and he said, this is a true joy. And I can't tell you how good that made me feel. So he was very gracious. I gave him a copy of the color shot and a copy of the black and white shot, and he graciously signed both copies for me. So then I had the hat trick, the one-of-a-kind shot of Delaney and Bonnie together with Jimi Hendrix, and he also signed the color shot. They're both up on the website, and I'll insert them here so you can see. And it was also cool to see Becca kind of skipping through the club, showing the pictures to all the guys in her band, so on. Look at this picture of Daddy and Jimi Hendrix, you know, and how often do you hear something like that? So he was such a nice guy. He gave me his phone number, he gave me his email address, and I told him I'd love to show him my Hendrix collection if he ever had time. He was in town. He said he had planned to come back to Nashville in the near future, and I told him that I knew that he had taught, and he confirmed this to me, George Harrison how to play slide guitar. And I told him that my son was a guitar player and was kind of struggling with the rudiments of slide guitar, and could he show him, you know, how it's done? And he said he'd be happy to, you know. So I thought, well, this will be just the coolest thing in the world. So he left, and we actually did stay in contact. I called him a couple of times. He sent me, and autographed this as well, a copy of a self-produced blues CD that he had done. He didn't have a record deal at the time. So he sent me this CD, and I, in turn, because I had friends at the XM Satellite Radio Network at their home base in Washington, D.C., I hooked him up with them. And in fact, my friend, the late, great George Taylor Morris, who's a legendary guy in American rock radio, who my website is dedicated to. But George got together with Delaney telephonically, and they did interviews and started airing Delaney's CD on Deep Tracks and on Bluesville, the Blues Channel, on XM. And sadly, though, shortly after, you know, a couple of years after, Delaney died, and none of that stuff got to happen. But it was a thrill for me to get to share some quality time with such a legendary figure in rock and roll. And it's also cool for me to be able to share this with you. So this is video 1 in my series on my Tribute to Jimi Hendrix video channel. Leave comments if you like. Be kind. And please go back and check out the website, JimiHendrixOnline.com, and see what you think. And more videos will follow. Thanks for watching.